Here, we tell slow, quiet, and completely ordinary stories designed to help you relax and fall asleep. Nothing exciting happens. There are no adventures, no surprises, no tension, just calm, gentle narration about everyday moments, cozy places, and peaceful nights. So find a comfortable spot, close your eyes, and let the slow, soothing rhythm of this story guide you into deep, restful sleep. Let's begin.
The rain had been falling since the early afternoon, soft at first, like a quiet whisper across the tall pine trees. By evening, it had grown steadier, a gentle but persistent rhythm tapping against the roof of the small wooden cabin. The cabin stood alone near the edge of a quiet forest clearing. It wasn't large or impressive. In fact, it was quite simple. Just one room, a small fireplace, a wooden table, a narrow bed near the window, and a small shelf filled with a few well-worn books. Nothing about it was extraordinary, and perhaps that was exactly what made it so comforting. Outside, the forest was slowly fading into darkness. The tall trees swayed slightly in the wind, their branches brushing softly against one another. Occasionally, a heavier drop of rain would fall from the leaves and land on the ground with a dull, quiet sound. Inside the cabin, the air was warm. A small fire crackled gently in the stone fireplace. The flames moved lazily, rising and falling with slow, calm movements. Every now and then, a piece of wood shifted slightly, sending a tiny spark upward before it disappeared. The room smelled faintly of pine wood and smoke. On the wooden table near the window sat a simple ceramic mug filled with warm tea. Thin curls of steam drifted upward, slowly disappearing into the dim, golden light of the room. There was no hurry here, no loud noises, no sudden events, only the steady rain outside and the quiet warmth inside the cabin. The window beside the bed looked out toward the forest. Small droplets of rain slid slowly down the glass, forming winding paths before joining together and disappearing at the bottom of the frame. If someone were to sit by that window for a while, they might notice how the rhythm of the rain changed slightly from moment to moment. Sometimes the drops would fall faster, drumming gently on the roof. Then they would slow again, returning to a softer pattern. The forest seemed to breathe along with the rain. Somewhere in the distance, a branch creaked quietly in the wind. A moment later, the sound faded again into the steady hush of the storm. Inside the cabin, the fire continued its slow dance. The warm light flickered across the wooden walls, revealing small details that might otherwise go unnoticed. The grain of the wood, the soft shadows in the corners of the room, the slightly uneven shape of the handmade shelves. Everything felt calm, uncomplicated, the kind of place where time moved more slowly. Near the fireplace stood a simple rocking chair. Its wood was smooth from years of use. When the wind outside grew a little stronger, the cabin would shift almost imperceptibly, and the chair might move just a fraction, rocking ever so slightly. Not enough to make a sound, just enough to remind you that the cabin was alive in its own quiet way. The rain continued, steady, patient, almost soothing. Somewhere above the cabin roof, water gathered along the edge before dripping slowly down into the dark grass below. Each drop fell with a soft, almost rhythmic pattern. Drip, pause, drip. Inside, The warmth from the fireplace spread gently across the room, reaching the wooden bed near the window. The blanket there looked thick and comfortable, the kind that holds warmth for a long time. If someone were to lie there now, listening to the rain and watching the slow flicker of the firelight, they might begin to feel their thoughts slowing down. The busy parts of the day would drift further away. The forest outside would continue its quiet movements. The rain would keep falling, and the small cabin would remain exactly where it had always been, quiet, warm, and patient in the middle of the rainy night. The kind of place where nothing important needs to happen, and where the gentle sound of rain is more than enough.
The rain continued its quiet rhythm through the evening, never becoming too strong, never fully stopping. It simply remained there, steady and patient, like a calm background to the slow passing of time. Inside the small cabin, the fire in the fireplace had settled into a gentle glow. The flames were smaller now, moving slowly between the dark pieces of wood. Occasionally, a soft crack could be heard as the heat worked its way through the logs. The light from the fire filled the room with warm colors, soft oranges and golds that danced along the wooden walls. Outside the window, the forest had grown darker. The shapes of the tall trees were now only faint outlines against the cloudy night sky. The rain made the leaves glisten faintly whenever a small flicker of firelight reached the glass. Droplets continued sliding down the window in slow, winding paths. Some moved quickly, merging with others and disappearing at the bottom of the frame. Some moved more slowly, pausing halfway down, as if deciding where to go next. It was the kind of quiet movement that you could watch for a long time without ever growing tired of it. The cabin itself made small, gentle sounds as the night deepened. The wooden beams occasionally shifted slightly as the temperature changed. The floorboards, warmed by the fire, gave off faint creaks that sounded almost like quiet whispers. Nothing alarming, just the natural sounds of an old wooden cabin settling comfortably into the rainy night. The rocking chair beside the fireplace moved ever so slightly again, not because anyone was sitting in it, but because the air inside the cabin moved gently with the warmth of the fire. The chair leaned forward just a little, then slowly returned to its resting place, back and forth, very slowly, almost like a slow breath. Outside, the rain found many different surfaces to land on. Some drops struck the wooden roof above with soft taps. Others landed on the leaves of the pine trees, making a softer, more scattered sound. Some reached the ground directly, darkening the soil and forming tiny puddles between the blades of grass. Each sound blended together into a calm and steady atmosphere, a sound that never rushed, a sound that never demanded attention, just a quiet reminder that the night was passing gently. Inside the cabin, the mug of tea on the table had cooled slightly, though faint steam still rose from its surface. The scent of herbs drifted softly through the warm air. The small shelf of books remained untouched in the corner. Their covers were simple and worn, the kind of books that had likely been opened many times on evenings very much like this one. Stories that were read slowly, perhaps even reread. The kind of stories that did not hurry toward an ending, stories that simply wandered along, page after page, just like the rain wandering across the roof tonight. The wind outside grew slightly stronger for a moment, not enough to disturb the calm, but enough to move the branches of the tall pines. Their needles brushed together softly,
producing a faint rushing sound that blended with the rain. Then the wind softened again, returning the forest to its quiet rhythm. Back inside the cabin, the firelight continued to flicker lazily across the walls. The warmth spread evenly through the small space, reaching the corners of the room and the thick blanket resting on the bed. The bed itself looked perfectly still and inviting, the pillow slightly indented, the blanket folded neatly at the edge, as if waiting patiently for someone to settle in and listen to the rain. Outside the cabin, the clearing had grown darker still. The rainwater slowly gathered in small streams along the uneven ground, moving quietly toward the forest floor. Occasionally, a drop of water would fall from a branch above and land on the cabin roof with a slightly louder tap. But even that sound faded quickly back into the steady hush of the night. The cabin stood firm and quiet in the clearing, warm, safe, surrounded by the soft sounds of rain and wind and trees. And as the hours of the night continued to pass, nothing hurried, nothing changed too quickly. Only the calm rhythm of the rain remained, steady and soothing, carrying the quiet forest deeper into the peaceful darkness of the rainy night.
The night continued quietly around the small cabin. By now, the forest had settled into a deeper kind of silence, the kind that only appears late at night, when most things have already become still. The rain, however, continued its gentle conversation with the roof, the trees, and the earth below. Its rhythm had changed slightly. Instead of the soft tapping from earlier in the evening, the drops now sounded fuller and rounder, as if the clouds above had grown heavier. Still, the rain remained calm, never becoming harsh or loud, just steady, just patient. Inside the cabin, the fire had become a bed of glowing embers. Small red lights pulsed slowly beneath the dark wood, occasionally brightening when a thin line of flame appeared and then faded again. The warmth in the room remained comforting. Even though the flames were smaller now, the thick wooden walls of the cabin held the heat well. The air inside felt calm and pleasant, carrying faint traces of pine and smoke. The rocking chair beside the fireplace had finally come to rest. Its slow movements from earlier had stopped, and now it stood quietly on the wooden floor, casting a long shadow across the nearby wall. Outside the window, the rain continued to travel down the glass in slow trails. Some drops joined together, becoming larger before slipping quietly toward the bottom of the window frame. Others remained separate, forming delicate patterns that changed slowly over time. If someone were watching closely, they might notice how each drop followed a slightly different path. No two were exactly the same, and yet together they created a quiet, endless motion that was strangely calming to observe. The forest beyond the clearing was now almost completely hidden by darkness. Only the closest trees could be seen clearly, their tall shapes swaying gently whenever the wind passed through. The wind was calm tonight. It came and went slowly, like a quiet traveler passing between the trees. When it arrived, the branches moved softly, and the rain shifted direction slightly. When it left, everything returned to stillness once more. The cabin responded to these changes in its own subtle ways. A beam above the fireplace gave a faint creak. One of the floorboards released a quiet pop as it adjusted to the warmth of the room. These sounds were not sudden or sharp.
They were slow and familiar, like the quiet voice of the cabin itself. The mug of tea on the table had grown cooler now. The steam had disappeared, leaving the surface of the tea smooth and dark in the dim light. The ceramic cup still held a bit of warmth, though, gently radiating it into the quiet room. Beside the mug sat a small candle. Its flame moved slightly whenever the air shifted, but it remained steady, casting a soft circle of light across the wooden table. Tiny shadows formed around the edge of the mug and the small stack of books beside it. The books looked old and comfortable, the way well-read books often do. Their pages had softened over time, and the corners of the covers were slightly rounded. They seemed perfectly suited for a night like this one. A quiet night, a rainy night, a night where nothing needed to happen. Outside, water slowly gathered along the edge of the cabin roof before dripping into the dark grass below. Drip, pause, drip. The pattern continued endlessly, never hurried. In the forest, somewhere far beyond the clearing, a distant owl called softly. Its sound drifted through the rain and between the trees before fading again into the night. For a few moments afterwards, the forest seemed even quieter than before. Then the rain gently filled the silence once again. Back inside the cabin, the embers in the fireplace glowed warmly, creating a slow pulse of light across the room. The bed near the window looked even more inviting now. The thick blanket rested quietly over the mattress, holding the warmth that had slowly filled the room all evening. The pillow waited patiently, slightly sunken in the center. If someone were lying there now, listening to the rain and the soft breathing sounds of the forest, their thoughts might begin to drift slowly. The small worries of the day would fade further away. The quiet rhythm of the rain would take their place, and the night would continue, calm and steady, around the little cabin in the clearing. A peaceful place, a warm place, a place where the rainy night could pass slowly and gently, hour by quiet hour.
As the night moved quietly forward, the rain softened again. What had once sounded like steady drops now became a gentler mist of water falling through the forest. The roof of the small cabin still caught the rain, but the sound had become lighter, almost like soft fingertips tapping across wood. Inside, the glow from the fireplace had dimmed further. Only a few warm embers remained, glowing softly in deep shades of red and orange. Every so often, a small spark would brighten briefly before fading back into the calm darkness of the hearth. Yet the room remained warm. The thick wooden walls of the cabin held the heat carefully, as if they had learned over many winters how to protect the quiet comfort inside. The candle on the table still burned. Its small flame leaned slightly whenever a faint current of air passed through the room, but it remained steady, lighting the surface of the wooden table and the nearby books with a soft golden glow. Outside the window, the rain continued its slow journey down the glass. Some drops moved straight downward, others curved slightly, guided by tiny imperfections in the surface of the window. The patterns they created changed slowly, quietly, moment by moment. Beyond the glass, the forest remained calm. The tall pine trees stood like dark silhouettes against the cloudy sky. Their branches moved only occasionally when a soft breeze passed through the clearing. The wind tonight had no urgency. It simply wandered through the forest, brushing lightly against the trees before moving on again. When it passed near the cabin,
It carried with it the fresh scent of wet earth and pine needles. That scent drifted faintly through the small cracks around the window frame, blending with the warmth of the fire and the wood inside. The result was a gentle mixture of forest and warmth, a smell that felt calm, familiar, peaceful. The rocking chair by the fireplace remained still. Its curved runners rested quietly on the wooden floor, casting soft shadows that shifted slowly with the candlelight. Nearby, the shelf of books seemed almost sleepy in the dim glow. Their quiet presence added to the feeling that this cabin had witnessed many nights like this one before, many evenings of rain, many calm hours beside the fire. The cabin itself seemed perfectly content in the middle of the forest. The rain washed gently over its roof, the wind passed quietly around its walls, and inside, everything remained warm and still. Outside, water continued to gather along the edge of the roof. Every few moments, a small drop would fall into the grass below. The sound was soft but clear in the quiet clearing. Drip, drip, drip. The rhythm was slow and natural, blending with the fading rain and the distant rustling of the trees. Somewhere far away, thunder rolled faintly across the sky. It was not loud or sharp, just a low, distant sound moving slowly through the clouds before fading again. The storm tonight was never strong. It was more like a quiet companion to the forest, passing through gently and without hurry. Back inside the cabin, the warmth of the room made the bed near the window look even more inviting. The blanket had gathered a soft pocket of heat from the fire. The pillow rested comfortably, waiting in quiet patience. The soft glow of the candlelight reached the edge of the bed, creating gentle shadows across the fabric of the blanket. It was the kind of calm scene that asked for nothing. No movement, no effort, just quiet listening. The rain, the wind, the slow breathing sounds of the forest, and the peaceful stillness of the small cabin standing quietly in the clearing. As the hours of the night continued to pass, everything remained gentle and unhurried. The rain softened even more. The wind slowed. The embers in the fireplace glowed quietly, and the forest, wrapped in darkness and mist, continued its calm and steady rest beneath the cloudy sky. The little cabin remained exactly where it had always been, warm, safe, and perfectly peaceful on this long, rainy night.
The night had grown deep and quiet around the small cabin. By now, the rain had softened into a very gentle drizzle. The drops still fell from the clouds above the forest, but they seemed lighter, as if the storm was slowly becoming tired after its long journey through the sky. The roof of the cabin still caught each drop with a soft, hollow tap. Tap. Pause. Tap. The sound was slow and steady, almost like a calm heartbeat echoing through the quiet clearing. Inside the cabin, the embers in the fireplace had grown dimmer, but they still gave off a gentle warmth. Their soft red glow pulsed slowly in the darkness, lighting the stones of the hearth with faint color. The room had grown darker now. The candle on the table had burned lower, its flame smaller than before. The wax had slowly melted down the sides, forming soft shapes that had hardened as they cooled. Even so, the candles still gave enough light to fill the small cabin with a warm, gentle glow. The wooden walls seemed softer in the dim light. Their patterns and textures appeared calmer now, the shadows blending quietly into the corners of the room. Outside the window, the forest had become a deep and peaceful darkness.
The outlines of the trees were still there, but they had softened with the mist and the lingering rain. Every now and then a small drop would fall from a high branch and strike the leaves below. That quiet sound traveled softly through the night air before disappearing again. The wind had become almost completely still. Only the faintest movements of air passed through the trees, and even those seemed slow and careful, as if the forest itself was resting. Back inside the cabin, the rocking chair remained quietly beside the fireplace. The room had grown so calm that even the smallest sounds felt gentle and slow. A soft crack came from the fireplace as one of the logs shifted slightly among the embers. Then silence returned. The mug on the table sat quietly where it had been all evening. The tea inside was now completely still, its surface dark and smooth in the candlelight. The books beside it remained untouched. Their pages held many quiet stories, but tonight the cabin itself seemed to be telling the gentlest story of all. A story made of rain, of warm wood, of quiet firelight, and the peaceful sounds of a forest at night. The bed near the window looked especially comfortable now. The blanket held the warmth of the room, forming soft folds across the mattress. The pillow rested quietly at the head of the bed, slightly indented, as if someone had once laid there listening to the rain. If someone were resting there now, they might notice how the sounds of the night had grown even softer. The rain had slowed. The wind had faded. Even the forest itself seemed to breathe more slowly. Outside the cabin, the clearing was dark and calm. Water from the rain had gathered in small puddles between the grass. When the occasional drop fell from the roof, the puddles answered with tiny ripples that spread outward and disappeared. Above the forest, the clouds continued to drift slowly across the sky. Though the moon could not yet be seen, its faint light softened the darkness just enough to give shape to the distant trees. Everything moved slowly, quietly, gently. The small cabin stood peacefully in the middle of it all, its wooden walls warm and steady against the cool night air. Inside, the embers in the fireplace glowed softly one more time before settling into a deeper red. The candle flame flickered once, leaning before standing straight again, and the rain continued its quiet whisper across the roof. Not loud, not urgent, just a calm, steady reminder that the night was still there, wrapping the forest and the little cabin in its peaceful embrace. The night had grown deep and endless, and the rain had slowed to a delicate drizzle. The small drops slid softly off the roof, tapping quietly as they fell onto the grass below. Each tap was gentle, almost as if the cabin itself were listening and breathing with the forest around it. Inside the cabin, the fire had become a low bed of glowing embers. They pulsed slowly with a warm red light, casting long, soft shadows across the wooden walls. The room smelled faintly of pine smoke, comforting and familiar, a scent that wrapped around every corner like a warm blanket. The candle on the table had burned low. Its flame flickered softly, casting a gentle glow across the surface of the wooden table. The small stack of books beside it seemed almost to rest under the candlelight, their pages holding quiet stories for those patient enough to read them. The window beside the bed framed the forest beyond in soft darkness. The trees stood tall and still, their shapes softened by the night and the lingering mist. The forest breathed quietly, the occasional faint rustle of leaves blending perfectly with the sound of the rain. A distant owl called once, its voice slow and gentle, then faded back into the calm night. The wind had all but disappeared, leaving only the faintest whispers between the tall pines. Every sound was small, delicate, and peaceful. The bed looked inviting. The blanket held the warmth of the cabin, and the pillow rested softly at the head. If someone were lying there now, they would feel the calm of the cabin settle around them. Every worry, every thought from the day would drift slowly away, carried off by the steady rhythm of the rain. The room was alive only in quiet ways, the embers pulsing, the candle flickering, the faint creak of the wooden floorboards adjusting to the warmth. These small, gentle movements reminded anyone inside that the cabin was steady and safe, a little world of comfort in the middle of a dark, rainy forest. Outside, the drizzle continued. Each drop slid slowly down the roof, landing in the grass with the softest of splashes. The puddles in the clearing reflected the faint light from the cabin, shimmering softly like tiny mirrors in the darkness. Time seemed to stretch and slow. The night had no hurry. Each moment lasted longer, the sounds of rain and forest blending into a soothing, continuous hum. The cabin, the fire, the gentle shadows, the rhythmic drops of rain, all worked together in perfect harmony, forming a gentle lullaby for the night. As the hours passed, even the firelight dimmed further. The candle finally melted down to a small pool of wax, and the soft glow of the embers filled the room completely. Every shadow stretched and softened, merging into the warmth of the cabin. The rain began to fade almost entirely, leaving only the faintest sound on the roof. The forest seemed to exhale slowly, carrying the final whispers of the storm away into the distant night. Inside, the cabin remained warm and calm. The bed invited rest. The blankets held their heat. The pillow waited patiently. The quiet was absolute now, filled only with the soft pulse of embers and the faint scent of pine smoke. It was a night with no urgency, no need for movement or thought, just the slow, steady rhythm of the world outside and the gentle, protective warmth of the cabin inside. And in that small cabin, under the soft lullaby of the rain and the protective arms of the forest, all was still, all was calm, all was ready for sleep. Drift slowly, gently. Let the night carry you. Let the cabin's warmth hold you. Let the soft, endless rhythm of rain guide you into the deepest rest. The small cabin stands quietly in the forest. The rain fades, the night continues, and you, wrapped in comfort, are carried gently into sleep.